Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or waking around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere, despite you not changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet it feels like nothing is working. You are putting in all of this effort and you're just moving backwards. But we know now that your body is inherently different now that you've gone through these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life so you can reach those health and fitness goals, feel in control and in home in your body again, live a life full of vitality, and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today we are tackling anxiety. I cannot tell you how many women we talk to on a regular basis that maybe had a little bit of anxiety before or didn't suffer with anxiety at all. And now all of a sudden it's like, what the heck happened? I just feel anxious and worried all of the time. So today we're going to talk about why this happens during perimenopause and menopause, what are the causes, and of course, active solutions to help address those root causes to help you through this challenging time. So before we dive into that, I do want to say it's December. What the heck happened? This is wild. And so that means we are bringing back our mini 14-day challenge. This is going to help you stay on track without feeling ashamed for enjoying yourself over the holidays so that you're not dealing with gaining 5 to 10 pounds over the next little bit and then working really, really hard until May just to get back to where you are right now. We're going to help avoid that for you with a very simple, not time-consuming challenge. We ran it last year and it did so well. We are also giving away Starbucks gift cards and Amazon gift cards, free exercise programming, customized nutrition plans, and so much more just for participating. So it's $13. That is it. It starts December 9th. It'll be amazing. And you don't have to give up pecan pie, which is my favorite thing. So if you want more info on that, it's in the show notes for you. So menopause and anxiety. Here we go. We know that going into your perimenopausal years or the years afterwards, you may have started to notice a sudden shift in some things, likely because of their hormones, right? And we're thinking hot flashes, belly fat, all those things, right? But you may have noticed your mental health starts to shift as well. Boom, anxiety, right? So for some women in the perimenopausal transition or even post-menopause, anxiety can feel like it came out of nowhere. Or maybe you had like that little whispering of anxiety and now it's just boom. It's all consuming. It is taking over your thoughts, your mental health, and it feels so strong that you just can't escape it. Like it is overwhelming. And anxiety can be so debilitating, not only affecting your mood, but also your motivation to go out, to exercise, to do the healthy things, right? You're less motivated and you're finding that you're not enjoying things that you used to, right? Relationships may be starting to suffer because of it as well. And you lose that zest for life. We hear all the time like, oh, the things that I used to love, that used to bring me joy, that used to fill up my cup, they just don't do it anymore. So what gives, right? And you shouldn't be living with anxiety for the remainder of your foreseeable future. That is not good. That is not a good time. We know that you spend 40 to 60% of your life in perimenopause or the years that follow. And that's if you live to be 80. If you live to be longer than that, you're spending way over half of your life in perimenopause or the years that follow with lower hormones, right? You are not supposed to be crippled with anxiety and poor mental health and all these other health issues for the majority of your life. That's not okay, and we're not doing that here, okay? So as it turns out, of course, anxiety and your mental health are going to be directly correlated with the menopausal hormonal transition, of course. And of course, there are tons of things that you can do that we're going to talk about today. So let's first understand what anxiety actually is. Okay, so anxiety is what we feel when we are worried, when we are tense, when we are afraid. It's typically a feeling of fear, dread, uneasiness, heaviness, a little bit of panic, right? It's particularly about things that are going to happen, right? Or that we think could happen. This is the worrying, right? And anxiety is a natural human response. It's when we feel that we are under threat. And it can be experienced through our thoughts, our feelings, and physical sensations as well. And with regards to women's health, anxiety is the most commonly diagnosed psychiatric disease affecting more than 1 in 3 women. That's insane. That is astronomical, right? And you might be aware of what you're experiencing with anxiety if you're able to identify some of these common symptoms. So excessive worrying or stress, check. Difficulty controlling feelings of worry, feeling on edge, irritated, restless, tiredness and fatigue, feeling tired but also wired mentally where you just can't turn off your brain even though your body feels physically exhausted, inability to concentrate or stay on a task, right? Like you get distracted very easily, you struggle to fall asleep and to stay asleep. Again, you wake up with those racing thoughts and you're just, from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m., 5 a.m., you're waking up and struggling to fall back asleep. You're experiencing more muscle tension. Your heart rate is increased. You either are never hungry, or when you are hungry, you have like crazy cravings. Or you have that like tight heaviness pit feeling in your chest or in your throat, right? I'm sure that sounds very familiar to a lot of people. And yes, you might be able to link your anxiety to particular circumstances, right? So for example, you might feel anxious over a frequent work-related problem, or whenever you have to see a specific person, or maybe certain social events, or maybe it's a health issue, right? However, not all anxiety is linked to something you're experiencing in the present. In fact, most of the time it's worrying about something that happened in the past and you're trying to avoid it in the future, or you're just thinking about the future and trying to avoid that thing from happening again, right? So it's never about something that's present usually. It's way more often about the past or projecting into the future. So what happens is, like, I want to give you an example of like 2 very different hikes. I talked about this with some clients the other day. So imagine Steph just tropping through the forest, just hike. And, I'm just enjoying it. I'm like feeling the wind on my face. My breath feels cold. I can see my breath in the air, right? I am hearing the water. I am taking in the sounds and the sights and the colors of the trees and just enjoying like the burning in my lungs a little bit, like I'm enjoying this moment. Now imagine someone tells me there was a bear sighting 3 days prior. And so now I'm trapped through the forest, walk, and I am on edge. I am constantly evaluating my environment for a threat. I am like listening for the bear. I am looking for signs that a bear was around. I am like, just super hyper aware and just focused on, assessing the area for threat. How do I feel after those 2 hikes? From one hike, I feel bliss and fulfilled and enjoyed and just like I accomplished something. The other one, I finished and I'm exhausted. My brain hurts. My body hurts, like, the heaviness, exhaustion where like you feel it underneath your eyes, like that kind of feeling. All because of I was anxious about seeing a bear, right? But the reason you get that way is because you're constantly trying to avoid a bad situation. But that's all you're focusing on is that bad situation, which is exhausting. That's like, imagine if you're trying to sleep and there's a zombie apocalypse going on and there's been attacks recently and whatever. If you're trying to sleep, your body's not actually letting you go into a deep sleep because you're worried about an attack, right? So you're not fully in a deep sleep. You're kind of almost sleeping with one eye open. This is what you're doing to yourself with anxiety, and you work yourself up, right? You're so stressed about trying to avoid something in the future. But then we think about things in our past and we think about, oh man, like I don't want to gain the weight back. And then you're so focused on avoiding that thing that it's all you think about and all you look for and clues that it's actually going to happen again. And you work yourself up, right? And you're so busy trying to avoid that you miss the enjoyment in the process and enjoying who you're becoming and all these things. And now you're just projecting your past into your future again. And that's not helpful, right? So you end up in this cycle. So for example, it's that red car analogy that I've used so many times. Like you're looking for the bad things, you can avoid it, but then all you're seeing is the bad things. And by seeing the bad things and worrying about those bad things, you feel worse. And then when you feel worse, you're just like, okay, this is true. And then your body keeps looking for more proof that these bad things are happening or how to avoid them. And then all your focus on is in the negative. And we know that negative thoughts make all this so much worse. And not thinking negative thoughts is more productive than actually thinking of positive thoughts. So it's more important to not think negatively than to think positively. So we need to like change that. Okay. So one thing that can really help is like looking at your past. What can you learn from it? And then that helps you view that experience as like through gratitude. It gives you confidence. You've learned something. And then you can move forward, right? Like that's really great. And then you're not anxious about it happening anymore because now the feeling associated with that event is now no longer something that you have to worry about or that you fear because you got through it, right? Like I see this so much with people who struggle with someone passing away. I'm probably going to cry here, but we're going to work through it. Because my mom passed very unexpectedly. It's almost 3 years now, which is crazy. It doesn't feel that long. Very suddenly, out of nowhere, we did not prepare. It was devastating, to say the least. And, you know, I could have viewed that whole situation as, I mean, it was catastrophic and brutal, but I could have viewed that and then live the rest of my life just completely afraid and anxious that what happened to her will happen to me. I could live my life just constantly focusing on what I don't have with her gone, right? That she's not going to be here for my son's first Christmas. You know, like that's hard. And you can focus on that, and then all you're focusing on is what you don't have and what you're struggling with and what you're so afraid of happening again. But I look back and I rewrote what those moments meant. You know, her passing for me is, I'm grateful. I had 2 wonderful weeks where I was able to just spend so much time with her when she was conscious and share stuff. She was able to tell me things she wanted to tell with me. And it was beautiful. And it gave me the opportunity to learn from it. You know, like I was able to learn, like, life is short. I mean, we're told it all the time. But like, man, I was not expecting to lose her before I ever had kids. Before I got married, you know? So you get to rewrite what that event means. So that now instead of feeling anxious and worried that, oh my gosh, I could die so young, now I'm grateful I had those moments with her. Some people go their entire life and never have amazing moments like that with their parents. You know, I am so confident in making sure I prioritize my health. You know, it taught me so much, and I now get to look forward in gratitude and in this confidence that I have so much that I can control so it doesn't become me. And, you know, like there's so many things I get to rewrite that. And now I'm not afraid of the death. I'm not afraid of losing because it happened and I survived, you know, and I'm in a very good place now. But there was some anxiety afterwards of like, you know, like this could happen to me tomorrow. Like I could lose everything. So what are the things that matter? And now it's like, it's just easier for me to be happy. I'm grateful. I am, you know, I'm not anxious about these things anymore because I've gone back and rewrote it, because if not, I'm just so focused on the lack and not having that happen and avoiding it all the time that it just overconsumes you, right? And we worry so much about things that are completely out of our control. And that's not helpful for you either. So yes, there are some times where we can like link our anxiety to a particular circumstance like that, right? But it's not always that way. And this is where we pivot into like the hormones and stuff, right? Like not all anxiety is linked to the past, the future events that have happened to us. Those are all external factors, but there's a lot of internal factors that influence that anxiety as well. Like, for example, I remember when I came off birth control and, you know, your hormones are a mess. It's wild when that happens, right? Because my body wasn't used to having to produce its own progesterone because it was getting it artificially, and then they took it away and my body's like, whoa, something's missing here. And we don't know how to do this because we haven't done this in like 20 years. This is wild, right? So I remember sitting in bed and just sobbing and like panicking. And Taylor was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. It's just happening to me. I don't feel like I'm in control of my body. And again, this happens a lot in perimenopause and menopause. It's not that different of a story because your hormones are going to influence things so much. So let's dive into hormones here first so you can understand like what's actually happening so you don't feel crazy. You feel empowered, and then you can start making choices to improve these things. So the first one is hormones, right? They are a main reason that our anxiety shifts during perimenopause and menopause and the years afterwards, right? But it's not just your sex hormones. I'm going to talk about a few main ones here. So the first one is estrogen. She's dramatic. We know this. And she's responsible for so many things in our body. She's important for cardiovascular health, bone health, the ability to build muscle, our metabolism, our blood sugar control, our stress response, how our body stores fat, our energy, our mood, our libido, our sleep, so many things. So it's not astounding that it also affects anxiety, right? So according to the Harvard researchers, estrogen actually helps calm the fear response in healthy women. In 2006, a study found that changes in endogenous E2 levels, that's estridyl, that's the reproductive estrogen that starts to decline during perimenopause and menopause. So we know that with those changes, we see that women's susceptibility to anxiety and depression disorders starts to increase. There was even one longitudinal study that followed women for an average of 5 years. So some were a little bit less, some were a little bit longer. And they were monitoring them. They had a regular cycle when they started. They didn't have any symptoms. There was 29 asymptomatic women. So they didn't have any hormonal symptoms. And they were having their cycle regularly. And they followed them for a significant amount of time. And until they went without a cycle for 6 months in a row. So almost half of the women developed an episode of new onset depression they did not have before. The study also found that during the late perimenopause period, these women had the majority of these new episodes of depression and anxiety. So this was the 12 to 24 months that surrounded that last year without a cycle. So 12 months before a cycle, 12 months after a cycle, that's where they started seeing women having the most new onset of anxiety and depressive type episodes. And this one's crazy. Incidents of anxiety and depression disorders were found to double post-menopause. Double. This is why I get a little peeved when people go to the doctor and the doctor just wants to toss them on anxiety and depressive antidepressants, which that's fine. They help so many people, right? Anxiety medications have their place, antidepressants have their space, but are they even considering hormones? Are they even considering these things? Because that is a massive amount to have double the instances of anxiety and depressive episodes post-menopause because estrogen declines. Come on. That's pretty massive to me, right? That should be pretty massive to you. So this is why understanding how everything works and why is really important. One study also found, this one was in mice though, that those with low levels of estrogen throughout their lifetime had a significantly higher level of anxiety throughout their lifetime than the mice that had normal levels of estrogen. So estrogen absolutely has a massive impact on your mood and anxiety. We also know that as estrogen and progesterone decline, it affects production of serotonin, our happy hormone, our feel-good hormone. We also see that receptors in the brain, they don't connect as well to serotonin, and there's fewer receptors now. So we see in general mood decreases because of estrogen and progesterone declining. Then we have progesterone. Progesterone, not as dramatic as estrogen. Estrogen is hold my earrings, I'm about to throw down kind of lady. And then progesterone's let's take a few deep breaths, pass me your earrings, but let's talk this out a little bit more, the yin and the yang, So we do know that progesterone, when we have her in the right amounts, we feel good. We feel relaxed and just grounded, and stress just rolls off our back. We're not reactive. And many women are I definitely don't have that, right? Lots of us are that is not how my partner would describe me, right? So Progesterone actually plays a very key component of our overall mental health. It's finding it has important effects on our brain chemistry and relaxation, like I just mentioned. And low levels can have really severe mental effects on women. Since this hormone is also a neurosteroid, that can have a significant impact on our brains. So there was actually a study in 2023, and it found that there is a membrane progesterone receptor in brain cells, which is related to the controlling of our emotions in our amygdala and our hippocampus. So it has been suggested that its malfunction, or when progesterone goes down, it may contribute to emotional dysregulation in women. This is also why when sometimes we're in certain parts of our cycle, we want to smother our partner with a pillow, right? The decrease in progesterone levels in perimenopause is associated with affective symptoms and an increase in some of the psychosomatic syndromes, and is also found that synthetic progesterones, like those that are found in IUDs and certain birth controls, actually aren't metabolized properly to have that same calming effect on the brain like natural progesterone is. So progestin, I did a whole podcast on this quite a long time ago. Like you can search progestin, metabolism, menopause podcast, and it'll come up. But progestin and progesterone are super not the same. They have very different effects on the brain and your body in general. A lot of the things that progesterone does, like keep us grounded and relaxed, progestin actually does the opposite. So this is very important to understand. If you have people in your life who are on birth control, I'd highly recommend like you get them to listen to it just so they understand how all of these things kind of come to play, right? So that's progesterone and estrogen. The next one, of course, is cortisol, my favorite, that stress hormone, right? You know, I talk a lot about the effects of cortisol on our health, especially in perimenopause and menopause, because it is massive. We see that the long-term activation of our stress response system and too much exposure to cortisol and other stress hormones can disrupt literally everything in our body, because cortisol will decrease our progesterone, our estrogen, our testosterone. It'll make our blood sugar control worse. It will increase instances of anxiety and of heart disease. We see a harder time building muscle mass. We have worse energy, poor sleep. It can make like hormonal symptoms worse. We see our gut health get worse, more allergies actually, more inflammation, more leaky gut, more constipation. Our liver function gets worse. So cortisol is like, of course, going to have an influence on our brain, right? Like there's no way that it's not, considering how powerful it is in other areas of our body. So let's talk about this, because cortisol, like being exposed to stress over long periods of time, puts you at a higher risk of many health problems, including anxiety and depression. And where does stress come from? It comes from not eating enough food, from fasting, from skipping meals, from having calories be too high one day and then too low the next. We're rushing all the time. We're not getting enough sleep. We're doing tons of high intensity cardio and exercise. We are working out fasted. We are dealing with financial stress and, all the things in the world. We just got out of out of COVID not that long ago, right? Like a big pandemic. We have, taking care of sick family members. We're dealing with grief and PTSD and, your dog pooping on the floor, your kids driving you crazy, in-laws commenting on what your Thanksgiving dinner was like, right? There's so many things that cause stress. But, the under-eating, over-exercising, avoiding carbs, the fasting, all those things are making it worse. So let's talk about the brain and cortisol. The brain's limbic system is comprised of a few different areas. So we have like the hippocampus, the amygdala, hypothalamus, the thalamus. And those are just the big areas that are in massive control of our emotional processing, okay? So when we see cortisol go up in a stressful situation, this has consequences for the functioning and condition of those emotional centers in our brain. The structure most exposed to high concentrations of cortisol is going to be our hippocampus, just due to the number of steroid receptors that it has. And recurrent stress from, all the things that we talked about changes the structure of the neurons, and long-term stress can lead to the death of those neurons in the hippocampus. So neurons are like the highways that like allow the brain to talk to each other and make decisions. So if those things start to die off and the structure changes, emotional regulation is going to be off. We are going to be far more reactive, right? We're spontaneous. When you like look back on your day and you're like, ooh, that may have been a mild overreaction. And then you're finding this happens to be like all of the time. This could be part of it. Right? So we know that chronic stress is going to have a direct connection to the health of our brain that regulates our anxiety. So if you're also pairing this with hormone changes that happen, oh my gosh, like you're going to see your brain take a giant hit this way, and anxiety will get worse and worse if we're not doing something to deal with it, because the way estrogen and progesterone work is they help buffer your cortisol, because it's not realistic to just get rid of all stress from your life. That's not realistic, right? That's never going to happen. So we need to learn how to buffer stress differently, because usually progesterone and estrogen will help keep cortisol in check. So what happens when perimenopause and menopause and cortisol or progesterone and estrogen go down, it's like you have this giant dinner plate and you can topple up all this stress on top of it. So you can handle that, right? And then as progesterone and estrogen go down, that dinner plate turns into like a salad plate and then a little dessert plate, and it just gets smaller and smaller, but you haven't taken any of the stress off. And this is where you're like, oh, but I've always been good. Like nothing has changed. Like I haven't done anything different. Like I can handle it fine. I've been handling it fine for years. And it's like, you may have not changed anything externally, right? Because you're like, I haven't changed anything and I'm struggling and I'm gaining weight and I feel like crap and I can't sleep. You haven't taken anything off that plate. That plate is getting smaller. So you feel like you personally haven't made any changes to cause all these negative side effects that you're experiencing, but internally things have. So before you could handle a 9 out of 10 on the scale before the cortisol jumped up, and then you started seeing poor energy and the cravings and the losing muscle mass and the belly fat and hormonal symptoms and the sleep, all those things, right? Now, instead of having that hit when you're at a 9 out of 10, it's only a 5 out of 10. So you are going to see that your body can't handle stress like it used to. This is why what you used to do isn't working anymore. And this is why you are having way more anxiety than you ever did before, because you have this crazy high stress and you're like, no, Steph, I'm fine. I'm handling it fine. This has just been my life. It's totally normal. Your body doesn't care. Okay? It's taking in what's happening and it's sending signals to your brain of, hey, yo, we're stressed. Helped. I'm waving the white flag. And you're just like, we're fine. We're fine. Totally ignoring the invasion. Okay. So we need to make sure that we're aware of this as well. Then we have testosterone. And this is a whole other can of worms, because unless you're complaining about libido, good luck getting testosterone tested. Like it's very hard. If you have a doctor who does it, amazing, refer them to everyone. Because it's very hard to get testosterone tested as a woman, let alone get it prescribed, right? So what we're seeing is low levels of testosterone have been linked to elevated worry and anxiety. Not to mention also like struggling with energy, your libido, struggling to put on muscle mass, right? Blood sugar control, all massive things that are very important when testosterone is low, but yet unless you're having issues with libido, we're not going to test it, which is gross. Anyways, so testosterone isn't supposed to decrease in menopause, right? It's for some people, it actually is supposed to increase because it's going to help take over that stress buffering response and blood sugar control when estrogen and progesterone go down. However, we are seeing an astronomical amount of women coming in with low testosterone after we test them. It is insane. And there are, again, what I said, like so many negative side effects when testosterone goes down. So this is a huge problem. And we know that testosterone is also linked to mental health, mood. So low levels of testosterone is associated with increased anxiety and depression in women. So if you are under stress, if your estrogen is declining and your progesterone is declining and your testosterone is declining and your cortisol is going up, of course you're going to feel like garbage. Of course you're going to have anxiety. Of course you're going to struggle with your metabolism. Your body's not good at burning calories. Of course you're struggling with weight loss. Of course you're struggling with sleep and energy and cravings. Of course. But yet, no. We don't want to actually address the root cause. Let's just throw some more medications at you, right? This is why it's important to understand how all this works. And it ends up being quite a vicious cycle when you think about it. So your body's going to produce stress in response to threat or fear, regardless if it's happening or not, right? So these hormones are there to help you cope and prepare for action, right? So if a bear jumps out of the woods when I'm hiking, I can hightail it out of there, or actually probably not hightail it. Reverse slowly, right? That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to move slowly, make some noise, I think. Bring some bear spray with you probably. It's a good idea too. But, you're prepared for this thing. That's what's supposed to happen. But we're so focused on like avoiding feeling uncomfortable and from things in our past, right? So we're like worried it's going to happen in the future, or we're worried about what can happen because we're like catastrophizing and watching the news, which by the way, only shows you negative things. And like negative things are very easy to stay listening to and captivated compared to good things. Like think about like a negative thought, like you can hyper focus on that for so much time. A good thought or like thinking about complimenting yourself, what a wild thing to do. Imagine trying to focus on complimenting yourself and how great you are and having like gratitude and stuff like that for yourself for 15 minutes versus like complaining about how terrible the world is. One is a lot harder than the other, correct? Yes. So you're in this state of like that negative stuff where then it just, your cortisol increases, right? So then cortisol comes up and like you don't actually have to act on anything. You're just sitting here doom scrolling. And you're just left feeling anxious because your body doesn't have to do anything. You're just sitting there. So that cortisol goes up, you feel anxious, but also at the same time, it's decreasing your estrogen production. It's decreasing your progesterone production. It's decreasing your testosterone, right? And then we're seeing that that's going to make it a lot easier for cortisol to remain elevated or to go up even more, which is then going to negatively impact those hormones again, which just makes anxiety worse and worse and worse, right? So hormones go down, cortisol goes up, hormones go down even more, cortisol goes up even more, and it goes around and around and around. And of course, we're stuck in this vicious cycle of anxiety and a stress response, right? So hormones absolutely influence anxiety, and it's very common in perimenopause and menopause. It is not normal. It is common, and you don't have to deal with that. I'm going to talk about all the things that you can do in a little bit here. So that was cause number one was hormones. Cause number two, chronic stress. Obviously, we talked about cortisol, right? So when estrogen progesterone goes down and we see that stress threshold go down, we're going to see that root cause makes anxiety get a lot worse, right? This has all to do with like that dinner plate analogy I talked about. Then we have 3, blood sugars, which is astounding to a lot of people. This does not mean cut out your carbs though. Okay, let me just preface this. So the menopausal transition can increase insulin resistance for some women. This is because estrogen and testosterone both help support blood sugar control. Okay, but we know that when stress goes up from skipping meals, from fasting, from being stressed out, doing tons of exercise and cutting carbs, cortisol can increase even more quickly. And when cortisol goes up, it breaks down muscle mass, takes it to your liver, uses it for sugar in your body, right? So blood sugar goes up. And then if you don't eat, you're not eating enough carbohydrates and things like that, or eating enough food in general, you're going to see that cycle continue over and over and over again. And when sugar goes up in our bloodstream, we need to use insulin to help our body move the sugars into like cells in our body so that we can use it, right? But then what happens is if we become insulin resistant, because insulin's always in our body all the time because we're always stressed out, our body isn't listening to insulin, and then those sugars get shuttled into belly fat, regardless of the fact that you're not eating that much food, regardless that you're fasting, regardless that you're eating low carb. So cutting out carbs is not the answer because carbs actually help lower cortisol so you're not seeing that muscle breakdown. And then when muscle goes down, we're seeing our fat percentage go up, right? So eating carbohydrates can actually really help counteract that, which is huge. You just need to learn how to eat them. I did a whole podcast on this that I'm not going to get into too depth in here. But blood sugars and anxiety, let's tail back into this. Your brain primarily runs on glucose. And what is glucose? Carbs. It's a sugar, right? So there is a growing body of evidence that suggests the relationship between mood and blood sugar, and struggling with like high blood sugar, low blood sugar that comes from like that stress response or eating really highly processed foods, or not having enough protein and veggies in your diet. Those symptoms of poor blood regulation can actually mirror the poor mental health symptoms that we're experiencing and make irritability, anxiety, and worry worse. Then we have poor diet. This one's massive, you guys, like under eating or eating inconsistently. So we want to stay in like a 200 calorie range window. So if we're doing like 2,000 calories one day, 1,400 the next, even if the average hits what you want, that up and down is a really big stress on your body because your body can't handle that anymore. Remember, we talked about how that dinner plate got smaller. So we need to make sure that you are eating consistently to take stress off the system. But also, if you're not eating enough whole foods, we can become nutrient deficient. And we see this all the time. And there's lots of nutrient deficiencies that are very common in perimenopause and menopause, which if then we are getting enough of those, can actually help with hormonal balance, our cortisol levels, our inflammation, hormone production. So ones that we recommend are vitamin B50, so vitamin B complex, because most women are going to be deficient in this, especially if you've been on hormonal birth control. It will deplete you of that so quick. Very hard to get in diet, hard to absorb. So highly recommend supplementing with vitamin B. I am just remembering that I forgot to take my supplements today, so I'm going to have to do that after this. Magnesium is amazing. It helps with relaxation, hormone production pathways. It also helps lower cortisol. So taking that before bed, 400 milligrams, amazing. Omega-3s help lower your inflammation. So that is going to help keep cortisol in check as well, because when inflammation goes up, cortisol goes up. And then vitamin D, very important for different hormone pathways as well. Again, try and get those in food, but also supplementing is never a bad idea for those. They're relatively cheap, so there's nothing like fancy that you need to do there. Number 4 that we see is contributing to anxiety is lack of self-care. So common in the women that we work with that are in our program. It's insane. They have spent years, and I mean like decades, taking care of everybody else. They have their marriage, they have kids, they have sick relatives, people who have like parents passing away and having to deal with like the house and all the stuff. Like it's exhausting. I've been there and it's terrible. Plus you're dealing with that grief, right? You've got pets that you're taking care of, running your household, doing all the chores, right? Working full time too, trying to advance your career. And then a lot of women we work with are also single parents, which like I'm blown away by single parents. You guys I honestly don't know how you do it and find time for yourself. And I know you do it because you don't have a choice, right? And you love your kids, but like, my goodness, you guys deserve the world, honestly. Blows my mind, right? And then, so you're focused on taking care of everybody else, right? So many women we talk to are this way. So many women in our program are this way. And your internal health ends up getting kind of terrible, to be honest, right? And it's really connected to not taking care of you for literally decades. And maybe this is you. You spend years caring for everybody else and not making time for you along the way. And then everything happens slowly, suddenly, right? This is something that Coach Carrie-Anna's partner had mentioned to us. And I thought it was such a good analogy. It's like, it's not it's like, oh my gosh, just overnight it happened. It's like, no, it didn't. No, it didn't. This is years and years and years in the making. This is like, what's a good analogy here? I don't know. Let's say you have like a table and you're just like, every day, you're loading stuff on there. And then finally one day, boom, it breaks. It's not that one thing that like caused it to fall apart. It is years of adding weight and stress onto that table, right? That's like a rubber band. Like every day you just like pull it down a little bit further every day, and you're just holding it every day. And then eventually it's going to snap because it can only handle so much. Right? So we think that it's like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden. It's like, no, this is years in the making. And then when your hormones change, that's the last thing that kind of broke the camel's back, right? But that wasn't the thing. It's all these things over time. It happens slowly, suddenly, right? So a lot of us don't even realize how detrimental all of that is to us, right? We don't realize how not taking care of ourselves, making time for us to slow down is so important. Neglecting self-care can cause like crazy increases in anxiety, distractibility. You can't focus, you're angry, you're exhausted. You'll also start seeing things like sleep gets worse. When we're not sleeping well, like we don't make the best decisions, right? Our relationship satisfaction decreases, our self-esteem goes down, empathy and compassion for ourselves go down. And to add to that, you're just still ongoingly exposed to stress without proper self-care, right? And so you're putting yourself at like really high risk of developing things like depression, heart disease, right? Like it's wild, you guys, like how much this happens. And like people are like, oh, well, I don't have time. It's like, if you don't make time for it now, you're going to be forced to make time for it later. And it's going to be a lot more expensive. And you're going to spend a majority of your life struggling. And I don't want to see that for you. Nothing breaks my heart more than like women being like, oh, I can't. I feel guilty. Do you not think that being a happier, healthier version of you is going to be better for everybody else around you as well? Right? We don't have to like wait to take care of ourselves. You don't need to earn rest. We don't need to earn the right to slow down, right? And then like when you do slow down, some people feel worse first because your body is so used to being go, 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 go all of the time, that then when you slow down, your body panics because it thinks something is wrong. Because, whoa, we don't slow down, something bad must be happening. It's uncomfortable, right? So it's going to take time. It's going to take time, and it's going to be hard, right? It's hard to put yourself first and have the boundaries, right? But boundaries don't exist to keep people out. Boundaries exist to allow a filter for people to know how to communicate with you and be with you and have a relationship with you. So if you can fit within the confines of those boundaries, everyone's healthy. Everyone is happy. Everyone is respected. You deserve that, right? And then we have that snowball effect. Like just like I talk about metabolism adapting over time, like, you eat low calorie, low, low, low. And eventually that becomes your maintenance because your body just has all these internal systems that just slow down. So your body starts getting worse at burning calories. So you need to bring that metabolism up so your body is good at burning calories so you can lose weight later. But that won't happen because your maintenance right now is so low. Your body sucks at burning calories that it cannot go any lower because if it does, it's too stressed out and you will gain weight, right? We see it all the time. So it's the years of yo-yo dieting and the low calorie diets and crazy exercise and, not sleeping and all of these things that contribute to your metabolism being stuck now, right? It's the same thing with the anxiety. It snowballs over time. And when we don't address the little things and ignore that underlying anxiety and don't put ourselves first when we need to for decades, eventually your body just no longer can handle it, right? And this doesn't mean that we can't fix it because we can. We do it all the time. I was talking to one of the women that we did a Dutch test with, her hormone testing, and she'd been on antidepressants, and had been struggling with her mental health for quite some time. And through her Dutch test, we saw that estrogen was not doing so good. We saw her adrenal health was not great. Her cortisol was like so low because she'd been on high stress for so long. And she was able to get off her anti-anxiety medication. She was able to get off her antidepressants, and she feels so good. And like to be in her presence, like you can feel it. You can feel like how good she feels, and it's amazing. So it is possible, but it didn't happen overnight. I'll tell you that much. Like it takes time. If you've built this up for 30, 40, 50 years, it's not going to turn around in 30 days. Maybe not even 3 months, right? For some people, they'll start feeling better right away. For others, it's going to take a little bit more work. And that's okay, because I promise you the work to actually feel good is so worth it. Because when you feel good, it is easier to be motivated, to want to exercise, to want to eat healthy, to spend time with your family. You don't just want to like sit and disengage and like not communicate because you're so overwhelmed and overstimulated. It's worth the work. So I do want to note that this is not an extensive list of all the causes of anxiety. It's just the main things that we see in the clients that we work with one-on-one. It doesn't account for things like, underlying trauma or PTSD or other mental health disorders, right? That can make anxiety worse. We're talking about like the things that we actually have control over that we can help support you with. So now we got to talk about how you can address these things, the root causes that are making the anxiety worse, right? So anxiety, of course, can make you feel like managing your anxiety is out of your control and can make your anxiety worse and you feel like more overwhelmed, right? But the truth is there is always something that you can control. Always, no matter how chaotic life might feel, no matter how much you feel like you are struggling, like your circumstances do not dictate your future, okay? They do not. And so you can get through this. This is a good analogy that my mentor had talked about where the circumstances are like the wind. Your choices, your actions, your beliefs, your words, that's the sails of the boat, and the boat is your life. So you need to navigate your thoughts, actions, beliefs, words to help move your boat where you want to go, regardless of the circumstances, right? But you need to be able to observe those things, remove yourself a bit to even see where the wind is coming from. What strategy can I implement to move me to the island that I want to get to, right? But so much we're just like, oh, the wind's over here, may as well crash that way. That's how we treat our lives. Like, can you imagine being on a boat with someone and they're like, wind picked up the wrong way, guess we're going to China instead, when you were wanting to go to Hawaii? Like, what? You would be like, that's unreasonable, just change the sails. But yet with our life, we can't do that. And I know that sounds wild, but realistically, like, we need to learn to adapt to our circumstances. Our circumstances do not dictate our success. They do not dictate where we can go and what we can achieve. Look at some of the most successful, most influential people in the world. They have come from devastating circumstances. But they didn't give up. They didn't just be like, that's how life is. No, they took control. They adjusted their sails, and look at them now. So there's always something that you can do. There is always a lever that you can pull to move you in the right direction. Because what happens is imagine, I talked about this on another podcast, that you are, let's say it's like a pie chart, right? So we have like a little piece of the pie. You want to go up and down. Like your destination is true north, but you are just off by like 5 degrees. At first, it might not seem like a big deal. That's just like a little bit distance, right? You move a little bit further in 5 degrees, and like from where you want to be to where you are, it's not that far. But as time goes on, those two endpoints get further and further and further away. And now the work you have to do to jump over is so much more. And it's going to take much more time. So learning to correct that sail sooner is going to get you so much closer to where you want to be. So what are those things that we can control? What are the things that you can start doing today to get control over your life, to help mitigate that anxiety so that you feel free? The first one, of course, is intentional de-stressing. It means working on retraining your stress response, which is not easy, okay? This doesn't mean that we can ignore the self-care things that bring us joy, right? It is important to ensure that we are intentionally de-stressing while also doing those things. So yes, we want to do like things that bring your heart rate down, that bring your breathing rate down, that make you feel good, right? So not activity. We're talking about like maybe it's journaling, maybe it's doing a devotional, maybe it's praying, maybe it's crocheting or doing some cross stitch, maybe it's listening to certain music that just fills up your cup and makes you feel good. Maybe it's having your feet in the grass, drinking a cup of tea. Maybe it's puzzles or Sudokus or a crossword. Maybe it's adult coloring books. My mom loved those. Those were her favorite. Knitting. She did that all the time. Watching a really crappy Hallmark movie. They're predictable. The ending is always happy. That's not going to put you in a bad mood, right? Like, so those things are helpful, but we also need to do things to retrain our nervous system to not like panic all of the time, to not always be looking for danger, to not always be watching for the threat, right? So this is all about like your vagal tone. I did a whole podcast on this, on how to retrain that parasympathetic nervous system so that you're not constantly in fight or flight. And these are going to be things like box breathing. You breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. This can be like diaphragmatic breathing. This can be meditation. There are so many things that you can just do for 5 to 10 minutes a day to retrain our nervous system to not be in fight or flight, to actually get you into that rest and digest portion of your nervous system. This is going to be key to so many things because this can really help balance out the chemical communication in our brain, as well as reinstill the positive releases of oxytocin when things are good, right? We want to bring those cortisol levels down. That's a massive benefit by doing these things to help reduce anxiety and improve your mood overall, and doing things that actually bring you joy. I can't tell you how many people I get on a call with, and it's like, what do you do that you love? What did you used to do that you really loved? And they haven't done it in forever. right? Like, what are those things? So the other thing that you can also do that's helpful when you're like in the middle of a very anxious moment is the 3-3-3 rule. So the moment something triggers you to like get out of that state. So look around and identify 3 different objects, identify 3 different sounds, move 3 body parts. Something like identifying 3 colors can help. Touch 3 different surfaces to get you out of that panicked state, to help you feel grounded with your surroundings can help people a lot. But you need to be able to get out of it. And for some people, it's obviously going to be very intense, right? There's no denying there's varying degrees of anxiety and what that looks like. But being curious about it is really great. So, you have a reaction to something, you get triggered, and then being like, oh, where did that come from? That's interesting. And the first time you do that, you're probably like, Steph, you're going to tell me to say that's interesting about a panic attack or anxiety. Like, be curious as to where is this coming from? Why do I feel this way? And it's going to be uncomfortable, but being curious and being able to disassociate and almost like you're studying something can be really helpful as well. If you're a type A person, this can really help. Step number 2 that can be really helpful for anxiety is controlling your blood sugars. So eating consistently, this means not skipping meals. We don't want to be fasting all the time either, eating inconsistently. So some days high, some days lower, meal timings all over the place can cause some massive sugar imbalances that directly contribute to anxiety and feeling more anxious in general, having anxious type thoughts. So when it comes to blood sugar control, we don't want to be skipping meals. Okay. You may think fasting is a great way to go, but it has several negative effects, especially in perimenopause and menopause when we see hormones are down, we see muscle loss, high stress are already causing damage. Fasting is just another way to add more stress to your body. So we need to really utilize nutritional consistency to balance blood sugars and stabilize your mood. Every client that comes into our one-to-one coaching program starts eating consistently. That's rule number 1. So we're aiming for caloric consistency and eating balanced meals with lean protein, carbs, fibrous veggies, and fruit, and eating their breakfast have noticed a significant decrease in their anxiety, their mood swings, their energy. Nutrition is so much more important than we think when it comes to controlling not only like our body and our body composition, but also how our brain functions. It plays such a huge role. Eating consistent calories is going to be a game changer because your body loves predictability. Okay. And you having that consistent food intake provides you with predictability that it's going to get fed, that it has energy. So it's not as stressed out, but it also functions so much better because your body is like firing on all cylinders now, which is what you want. This is where we typically see like hormonal communication and chemical balance get restored in the body, as well as your mood and starts to stabilize a lot better when we start eating consistent calories. Another one is no naked carbs. You don't want to cut carbs because like I mentioned, when you cut carbs, you see a decrease in muscle mass. Your blood sugar is going to go up anyways. Cortisol goes up. Cortisol helps keep cortisol lower. This is why having a bedtime snack with some carbs paired with fat or protein can make a huge difference. But you want to pay attention to the order of food that you're eating. Never having carbs on its own because it'll spike your sugars. So always having a fat or a protein with your carbohydrates and trying to eat most of your veggies and protein first before having your carbohydrate. And then people are like, well, what about a sandwich, Steph? You're not going to break apart the sandwich and eat the meat first and then the lettuce. Like that's obscene. That's ridiculous. So just have some veggies beforehand. Right? Have maybe some turkey pepperoni stick, like have something beforehand to help stabilize those blood sugars. And then you'll see a slight rise, it'll maintain, and then it'll come down, which is great. And then focusing on whole foods as much as you can. Not only are they satiating and keep you full and help you avoid cravings, they also have a numerous amount of micronutrients and antioxidants that we mentioned are very important that can help support your body better so you're seeing less instances of anxiety or poor mood. Self-care. Self-care is so important. That is number 3. It helps reduce anxiety by reducing your cortisol levels and improving your oxytocin production. Studies have cited benefits of self-care as enhanced confidence, 64%. 64% of people who participate in self-care practices have enhanced self-confidence. You want to be confident? Start taking care of yourself. Increase productivity. You struggle to be productive at work? There is a 67% increase in productivity when you are practicing self-care. Happiness increases 71%. So from a physical health perspective, self-care also is going to reduce your heart disease, your stroke risk, and cancer risk. Natural ways to help boost oxytocin through self-care is included by showing generosity to others. Cuddling with a loved one or a pet also helps to bring those cortisol levels down because oxytocin helps decrease cortisol. Number 4, this is a big one, hormonal testing. We are a big fan of this one because there are certain supplements or nutrients in our diets that can really help support specific hormones. And testing as much as you can first is always ideal so you actually know what do you need and what's a waste of time. That's why we offer the Dutch Complete testing for our clients that want it, because it helps give us a way better idea of what's happening in your body. Why is something high? Why is something low? Because we can see that with different detox pathways and production, if things are getting converted to something else, because your estrogen might be low because your body's converting it to something else, right? So this can really help us understand what the heck is going on in your body, understand where your cortisol curve is at. We see like levels of melatonin, we see levels of inflammation, like there are so many things in there. So we can like really target like nutritionally and lifestyle wise what you need to do to improve those areas. So for example, we can support low testosterone with omega-3, with lifting weights with longer rest periods, 3 days per week, having zinc or specific adaptogens. We can support progesterone with foods that have B6, magnesium, and zinc. You can also like potentially have Vitex. We can support estrogen by including more phytoestrogens in our diet or lignans. There's specific herbs that you can incorporate too. So there are so many things that if you have that knowledge, it makes it so much easier because you're not like just guessing and throwing stuff at the wall. Like you know why you're feeling a certain way, and now we can address it through nutrition. It's amazing. Exercise, especially lifting weights, can help so much. It helps with anxiety like crazy amounts. First, it can help release tension and build muscle, which can help protect against anxiety-inducing injuries. It can also help improve our confidence, our self-esteem, which can be beneficial in reducing our anxiety as well. But also like it releases dopamine. And so dopamine is also like a feel-good hormone, but it's supposed to come after hard work by achieving something. That's when we're supposed to get dopamine. But we get dopamine from like watching social media. We get dopamine when like someone likes our stuff on Instagram, right? We get dopamine that isn't actually earned. We just have it all the time. But true dopamine and feeling good comes from, earning it, from conquering something that gives you the confidence, right? So you have to be careful about getting dopamine from things that you don't actually earn it from, because that has a whole other negative side effect from it, right? So working out is one of those things. You conquered a hard thing, dopamine comes up, you feel good, you feel accomplished, you feel great, right? And we also know that like weightlifting in general is it's super beneficial because as we build more muscle mass, our blood sugars are going to improve. Our testosterone levels are going to improve. And those things alone are going to help improve your anxiety, right? And there's always this fine line of everything. Over-exercising has also been shown to make things worse, to make your anxiety symptoms worse, contribute to mental health disorders, because it really wears you out and increases that stress, which we can't handle as much anymore. So this is why learning how to exercise appropriately once you're in this hormonal transition is so key, because what you used to do won't work anymore, A, to get you to where you want to be, and B, you're also going to feel like crap. You're going to lose muscle mass too. You're going to have more anxiety. If you're an anxious person, going to the gym can be scary, right? So you want to aim for 2 to 4 days per week of heavy lifting sessions, taking 2-minute rest between our sets. We're following the same workout every Monday, every Wednesday, every Friday for 4 to 6 weeks before we change it up. Every single week you are trying to lift heavier. You should not be able to lift 2 above what the desired rep range is. So challenge yourself. Like if you are doing a bent over row with 10 pounds, get out of here. Lift heavier. You will so surprise yourself. Go to a gym and try a cable pulley machine of what you can row and keep moving the knob down until you can't do it anymore. I can guarantee you, most of you with one arm could probably row at least 50 pounds. You will be shocked. Okay. It's obviously harder with a dumbbell, but like The 10 pounds isn't cutting it. Like I can guarantee you can probably do 20 pounds. Try it. The worst thing that happens is you can't pick it up. That's it. You have to challenge your body, because if you are not challenging your body, there's no reason to put on muscle or maintain it, because it can already do the thing you're trying to do. You are working for those last like 3 reps in that rep range. The first ones don't even matter. They're just there to get you to where you want to be, to that struggle, because that's where the stimulus for building muscle comes from, right? And then, of course, walking consistently throughout the day is very important. Set an alarm. Go for, like, if you're going to go to the restroom, take a few extra laps. And you go to fill up your water bottle, do a few extra laps. Like, get some extra steps in, because that can also help as well. And then, of course, the last one is get support, because not everything can be cured with lifestyle changes and nutrition, right? We get it. Like, you should be trying to do these things, but also there's no shame in getting help. Right? Go talk to medical providers about solutions. If there's medications that you want to try, going to therapy can be very helpful. You could also, HRT can help too, right? So if you need to function optimally, because to get you to do the things that you want to do to be healthy, there's nothing wrong with taking medication, even in the short term, just to get you moving, to get motivated so that you can do the things. And then if you want to come off of it after, amazing, right? There is no shame in that. But we do need to make sure that you are doing all the other things and understanding the cause of why you're experiencing these things, so that you understand you don't feel hopeless, right? So you feel empowered, so you can live the life you've always wanted to live. At the end of the day, anxiety is a major disruptor of our mental and physical health, especially once you hit that perimenopausal transition, right? It can affect the way that we are able to thrive in life, the way that we are able to show up for our friends, for our families, for ourselves, right? But just remember that you are in control of so many factors. You can adjust those sails to get you to where you want to be, to help us deal with that anxiety, right? We are not subject to just grinning and bearing and getting through it, right? And just hoping that things will improve down the road, right? It's not going to get better on its own. You have control. You can do this. And if you need support, reach out. Maybe it's to a health practitioner. Maybe it's to us. I'm always, always, always happy. So I hope this was helpful. I hope there are little tangible tips that you can take from this. I hope that you feel a little bit more heard maybe, and that, empowered. And reminder, we do have that 14-day mini challenge coming up to help you navigate the holidays. Enjoy that pecan pie, my favorite, guilt-free while still staying on track. It's fun. We're giving away so much stuff. It was great last year. I hope to see you there. It's in the show notes. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.